SCGCon Philly.
Next on Eternal Durdles.
Hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our Patreon supporters out there. Thank you to the Durdle Maniacs. If you want to be a Durdle Maniac, go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and help support the channel. It keeps things going. It keeps things updated. Thanks so much for watching. On with the show. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Zach, do you think this SCG is indicative of the metagame at large, or was this just a snapshot in time?
I think this SCG is indicative of a lot of things, actually. A snapshot in time for a few things. Snapshot in time for how I think events are going to be going forward, and I felt a lot of this at Chicago. But you were talking about the legacy meta. I think that this is definitely a snapshot in time for the legacy meta. I hope, because I just don't want to scam 3 scam decks in the top 8. Four scam decks in the top 8. Gross.
The scam decks definitely ran the field. We'll definitely get into it because grief adds an additional complication to what we've talked about a lot on this podcast about like how legacy is just structured foundationally, and grief sort of fits in a unique spot with that for what it then does to the rest of the metagame, which, is borne out in the results, which we'll get into.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, let's go back and look at our predictions for the top 8. So, yeah. And then we'll go from there, right? So we left you at the last episode where we were talking about prep for SCGCon. We left you with a few predictions we had, and I wanted to go over them right now and show who did better in these predictions. So the first prediction, and this was all for top 8s.
I want to just point out for those who haven't looked at the results. I mean, who are you? Where are you? What are you doing? But just so you know, the top 8, not how it actually bored out. The ultimate champion was a Grixis Delver pilot, but the top 8 was Scaminator, Epic Storm, Ad Nauseam Tendrils, Scaminator, Grixis Delver, Leyline of the Guild Pack, Scion of Draco, 5-color beans, and Scaminator. So 4 Scaminators, 2 Storms variants, 1 Ad Nauseam Tendrils, 1 Epic Storm, and then a lone Leyline of the Guild Pack Beanstalk player.
Yeah.
And Grixis Delver, of course.
And Grixis Delver, yeah. So the first question I had for Phil was, how many of the Beanstalks will we find in this tournament? The correct answer was 4. Phil guessed 12, which is a lot. I guess 16, which is a lot more. So Phil's up by 4 right now.
I had anticipated Sultai Beans being more prominent than it was. A lot of the Sultai Beanstalk players seem to gravitate towards the Dimir Scaminator shell, or that deck rather than playing Beanstalk. So that the metagame percentage definitely bore that out, even though Sultai still had some smattering throughout the top 64.
Yeah. Then I asked, how many Orcish Bowmasters? Phil said 20. I said 20, and there were 20, so we got that 100% right. Phil's still up by 4. Then I said, how many Brainstorm, Phil? Phil said 20. I said 18. Full saturation, 32 Brainstorms in the top 8. Full saturation.
Yeah. Man, did I expected an Ancient Tomb gamer to sneak in. There were some in the top 16, but not in the top 8.
Did not happen.
I also expected a Painter player to be in the top. I get that. That's also Ancient Tomb, but not Stompy. I thought Painter might get in, and that did not. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a
Tony Scapone could have been the hero we needed, but he came in 9th place.
9th on the bubble. The hero we always want and need is in 9th always.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there were 0 Urza Sagas. You said 4, and I said 6. No, it's unfortunate for format diversity, I think.
I think it's good that Urza Saga doesn't do well. I think we're in a better place if Urza Saga is not.
Fine.
Okay.
So then, Force of Wills. I said 20. Sorry, you said 20. There were 24, and I said 21.
Got me.
Yeah. You know what's wild is then we asked how many Murders at Karlov Manors cards, and I thought we were both going to be high. At 11 and 9. That's one of the few times where I went under you as far as the betting was concerned. There were 12. Mostly lands, a couple of cryptic coats, a couple of other cards, but mostly the lands, the surveil lands.
Yeah, the surveil lands have shown up in Storm. That's they're they've been a proven shell there, and they even inspired the latest version of the Epic Storm in like a significantly meaningful way, which we can get into if there's time.
Yeah.
If not, check out epicstorm.com. Bryant is constantly innovating that, and of course, and the surveil lands. I don't know if anybody initially thought that the surveil lands would have the biggest impact on combo, but here we are.
This episode is brought to you by Tales of Adventure. Go to toamagic.com and use the code DURTLES for 5% off your order. You'll be directly supporting the show, and you'll get the entire order in one package. No more waiting for several packages. That's toamagic.com, code DURTLES for 5% off. How many Brian Kovals will be in the top 8? You said 1. I said 1.5.
You got me.
And honestly, the answer was 2. If we consider Brian Kovals as podcast members of Eternal Glory, there were 2 Eternal Glory members on there. We discounted Bryant Cook, and we were clowns to do so. The man's a maniac, and he got in there and got it. And like, dude, can we just talk for a second about Koval? Like, the dude's on a streak.
Yeah, I mean,
it is
both those guys.
wild.
Both those guys top 8'd North American Eternal Weekend, and then they top 8 here. I mean, they have it figured out. Like those guys just have it figured out. I'm still trying to figure out what they're doing that I'm not doing, other than playing good decks. But aside from
that's part of it, right? But here's the other thing is so look, Cook is going to be on Storm. We know that, right? Koval is displaying like his just mastery of the format by playing a different deck almost every tournament and doing it well and crushing people. Like that, he has that like that early John Finkelness for Legacy right now, and it's kind of amazing to watch. It's a real spectacle. If you're not paying attention to bigger tournaments right now, just go back and watch like the Eternal Cup. Like, I don't know if you can watch the Eternal Cup. I don't think anyone's doing it, but there definitely were videos for this. Obviously, it's just the dude was on fire. Did he make the top 8 of Eternal Weekend? He did, right?
He top 8'd Vintage Eternal Weekend.
Okay.
And then he got close.
Like, he was doing very good at Legacy at the Legacy event.
Yeah, I think he lost. I think he lost a win in or something like that. He got very close. He was close to running it back to back at
SCG Baltimore last year. I mean, the guy's on fire. It's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, I won that with the over on 1.5 Brian Kovals.
That was the most impressive bet so far.
People thought I was crazy, but it turns out I was right all along.
You ended up being right.
I took the hedge. So right now, Phil is up 8.5. And that is our bets. So currently in the running tally, Phil's up 8.5. We'll come back to those numbers as we do this for other events, because it's kind of fun to make these guesses and come up. But like, we were spot on Orcish Bowmasters. That's wild. And this is just a lot of interesting information. Like the fact that there was full saturation of Brainstorm in this top 8 it says something about the meta. It says a lot. It says almost nothing about Brainstorm that we didn't already know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real nod here is like, Brainstorm is sort of glue. I feel like Brainstorm gets a lot of heat for like, being this ubiquitous card, but I don't think that Brainstorm is really like informing or impacting like decisions that people are making otherwise. That like nobody's like, oh, I have to play these things because Brainstorm exists. You know what I mean? In the same way that they do for like legitimate threats or like lock pieces or, other parts of the metagame that people navigate towards. Brainstorm always gets like the clump of like, the cantrip cartel is like part of this thing, but like they're just glue. Like, yes, they improve consistency. Obviously, that's why like they're excellent tools and stand the test of time. But like that's it. They're just consistency tools. So unless you're doing some kind of lock piece to like hate out that kind of consistency and then punish that, like I feel like it gets lumped in with like all of these other like cards that you could argue are problematic in terms of their play patterns. That I don't think is warranted, even though I can understand the ubiquitousness as being something that's worth highlighting as maybe negative, but I disagree with it. But just calling attention to that. Like, I think that's in a separate pot. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. No, I think I agree. It is a separate issue for another time. Okay, so let's get the travelogue going here. I went to SCGCon all 3 days. Phil was there on Sunday. My day started out by deciding. So here's what the schedule looked like for SCGCon for Legacy. There was a 2:00 and a 5:00 on, and I think like a 9 a.m. or something like that on Friday. And I was like, if I skip out on the early one and I go to work, and then I determine with my friends that are also going, like, if we can get there for the 2:00 one, cool. I'll skip out of work a little early. If not, I'll make the 5:00 one, you know? And that's what ended up happening. We were like, okay, we're going to make the 5:00 one. We get to the venue at 4:30, right? Pull in, jump to the register, and I'm like, hey, sign me up for Legacy at 5:00. And they're like, sold out. I'm like, are you serious? It's sold out? Like, what? How's it sold out? Like, this is a SCGCon, you know? Add more space, you know? And that was sort of the that story is going to be the reoccurring theme of the entire weekend. Is SCGCon did not have enough space. It was running too many non-Magic events on top of that. The Command Zone was fully booked, but no one was in it the entire time, so I don't know what that was all about. People wanted to play in the Command Zone, because there was no space to free play anywhere else because it was all being taken up by events. But everyone was trying to just find a spot to sit down and play Magic with their friends, and they just kept getting moved from event to event to event. Would go in that spot, and then they have to move. It was a really terrible experience for anybody who came there to buy cards and play casually, or that just didn't want to completely spend the entire day playing paid events, you know. So 5:00, like I said, I didn't get in. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to look around, pick up my cards, say hi to people, you know, like hang out a little bit. And then we went to, you know, we went and got dinner, hit the craps table, won $200. Not mad about that. So I wake up the next morning at 9:00, you know, or 8:45 or something, shower, get dressed, head over for the 9:30 Legacy event. Get to the register office. Hey, it's 9:00. I'd like to sign up for the 9:30 Legacy event. It's sold out. Dude, are you serious? That one's sold out? Okay.
You gotta play around.
You know what? I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I certainly am going to, shame on me on this one, right? So I paid for the rest of the Legacy events for the entire show. So that was 2:00, 5:00, and of course the 5K on Sunday. So I was guaranteed to play some Legacy this weekend. So I sat down and I did a draft, and the draft was full of other people that just wanted to be in the Legacy event, but got stuck doing a stupid Ravnica remaster draft. It was terrible. We were all, everyone around me was upset that they couldn't get into an event that they wanted to get into, and this was the only event that they could get into. Like I said, this is going to be a theme for the entire weekend. And everywhere I went, all it was this complaint was like, we can't sit down anywhere to play. Lorcana is taking up a lot of space. Flesh and Blood is having an RCQ or whatever the heck they have. Like, to me, Phil, and I won't go on about this for too long, but like, this is a Magic event. Don't combine like the Disney event and the Flesh and Blood event with the Magic event. You're like, it's cannibalizing the room. And I understand why they're doing it, because those games are not as popular as Magic, and they're hoping that to suck off some of the Magic players from that to be like, oh, this looks interesting, I'll play that. Flesh and Blood has successfully done that, but adding a third game as your major event for SCGCon in a space that's just too crowded to do that. The basement of the Valley Forge Convention Center is too small to be running 3 major events at the exact same time. So, that sucked. To just the entire weekend, there was nowhere to be. I had friends showed up for like a few hours and just left because they were like, I can't actually be here to do anything, so I'm just gonna go. And again, like they were like, hey, like could we buy, like the Command Zone's physically empty. Can I buy a spot in the Command Zone? And the guy, bless his heart, like he's just doing his job. He's like, I'm sorry, the Command Zone's actually full all these spots are reserved for people playing. And it's like, there's like 6 people and there's like 100 tables or 100 spaces or whatever. And there's like 6 tables with people on them. So that had to be insanely frustrating to anybody who just like wanted to play casual. And that feels like how events are going to start going from now on, where if you don't sign up early, pay to reserve your spot somewhere if you want to play casually, you just have a bad time. Like that is how it goes. And what stinks for me about that is that I don't come to an SCG event to play Commander with my friends. I come to play in competitive events, but I bring a Commander deck because, hey, in between rounds, in between events or whatever, maybe I want to jam out with some people. And that's not an option. You have to pay money to be in the command zone. So I can't like pick up a quick game with some friends. It's kind of the antithesis of what that format is all about, is like the whole like pick up games in between a thing, have fun with your friends. No, it's all about like the bottom line, making money. SCG could not sell space to people because all the space was taken. And that's my rant. That's my whole rant on that. I won't go back to it. But I did have to say that was a supremely frustrating experience. One, to just be on one end of it, and the other to just hear people complaining about it the entire weekend. It brought the energy of the convention down. Every person had a take about that, including, and I won't name any names, including plenty of the judges, plenty of the staff on hand. They were just like, yeah, our hands are tied and we know it sucks and there's nothing we can do about it. So SCG, get your shit together. So
yeah, I don't have anything to add. I got nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't there for those days, so
I didn't run into any of that. I just signed up for the one event and I played in the one event, and that was it. Yeah.
So that's my whole take on what SCGCon was for a lot of people. If you had that experience, comment below, because don't make me look like I'm the one crazy person that's just ranting about this. Like, comment below, and you know what? I'll tag SCG and be like, look at all these comments. Look at all these comments. You're doing it wrong, guys. Huh?
I'm sure they've gotten feedback from it.
Oh, yeah.
Because, there's no way if the staff and crew were aware of it, that wasn't relayed.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Like I said, it had shades of SCGCon of MagicCon Chicago, in that there was no room anywhere for stuff. It's like, get a bigger space. Get the space that the crowd deserves, All right. 2:00. I played some Legacy finally. So I sat down and I played Infect for 3 rounds. I think I went 0-3. No, I only played 2 rounds because I just dropped after that and left, got dinner, got lunch and hung out with some people. But I played a Blood Moon deck and I played I think another Blood Moon deck. I felt like all I was seeing was Blood Moon. Like the entire weekend was just like, haha, Blood Moon, you suck. It was, like a Goblin Blood Moon, Goblin Bombardiers situation. So I was like, well, that was frustrating. Whatever. I've got 3 more tournaments to play this weekend. So then 5:00 rolls around, and I win my first round playing Infect against I lose my first round playing Infect against Blue Red Delver. This guy Dang Yu, super fun dude. We had a really good time, and it was like a real close, like who's gonna get it kind of match. The next round I beat wasn't Storm. It was wasn't Storm. It was Mississippi River. I beat a Mississippi River deck just by turn 2ing them in two games pretty quickly. Game 2, he cast something, and then he cast Throes of Chaos on turn 2 because he was on the play, and Tybalt's Trickery's it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know, something crazy is going to happen. He rolled a 1, so he only got to flip over 1 card. It was his other Tybalt's Trickery. And then that hit hit another Throes of Chaos, which then there was nothing left in his deck to hit. So then I just killed him. But what a bad run of luck for this dude.
No, we don't. I'm sorry. We don't feel bad for the Mississippi River players.
No, not at all. But and I turned, like I said, I turned 2 to both game. My turn 2. So it was the first one was just Glister Elf go. He played a Dwarven Ruins, and I was like, oh, you don't have interaction. Sick. Berserk. Yeah. then and then the next one, I was like, okay, I know what to mull to, so I mulled to a one land, like a turn 2 keep, kill, and I was like, hopefully he just doesn't have any interaction, and Tybalt's Trickery into Tybalt's Trickery, unfortunately. So
it was a higher variation of the deck that speeds it up by a turn. So like you live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree. So then the next round I played Yasu, and we're gonna just have Yasu tell it.
All right, we're here with Yasu. Yasu, you just played in the 130 Legacy event. Tell me about the tournament. How'd you do?
Yeah, so I went technically I lost to Zach. So I went 1-2. 1-1-1 actually. So my first round I played against 5-color like Leyline Beanstalk. Like imagine Leyline of the Guild Pack and then like a Beanstalk deck. So like it was insane. It was match
like
3.
Cyana Draco and stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It was insane. I killed him because I was on Scaminator. And then we went in game 3 because he had a containment breach, and then I ended up losing that one.
Okay.
Game 3, it was a really close one, but I got an Atraxon to play after a double days.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it, yeah.
And we scoped out that win. Round 2 was against lands. The traditional lands.
Okay.
I drew. Big surprise.
Was this Tim?
Jacob.
Okay.
Jacob, yeah. Game 1, I went with the reanimated package. Game 2, I died to a bunch of Urza Saga tokens. And then round 3, we just played like turns of draw go, and like the game was at a foul. And then round 3, I'll throw the question to you. How did that game go?
Well, okay, so I learned a valuable lesson in this match. One that I've been having a lot of trouble coming up with, like what I should do in a situation where I'm not positive what my opponent's doing, which is I need to throw down my threat, but have a backup mana to play Legolas' Quick Reflexes if I have it, right? Yeah. So I don't want to be greedy.
Yeah.
And so that paid off against you in the first round, because I think, what was it like?
So on turn 3, you were on the play, right? So you played Blighted Agent, held 1 mana up.
Yep. And you thought I was playing around days.
I thought, because I had a daze in my hand the entire time.
Yeah. So then that followed up with me untapping, and then coming in, and you had a reanimated troll, so there was pressure.
Yeah.
So I attack.
Yeah.
Embiggen.
Yep.
And you're like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'll invigorate, and you're like, that's 9. And I'm like, I'll invigorate, and you're like, well, my dazes won't do anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then game 2, I had a similar plan. I had a troll out. We got some Bowmasters out. And no, it wasn't troll. It wasn't a troll. It was just 2 Bowmasters. So I was keeping you in check. I had some Bowmasters into play.
And I saved my guy with invigorate.
Yeah.
But still,
yeah, you did. You had an Ink Moth, right?
Yeah.
We just kept hitting each other. 1 infect, 4 4, 1 4, and it was the final turn. What were you doing?
I decided I only had 1 turn left.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Zach played a Sylvan Library with my 2 Bowmasters on the battlefield. Right? We're talking about
Almost got there, right?
Yeah.
So I draw the 3 cards. Of course, you're going to deal damage. One of the cards is an Embiggen, so I can save my guy.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll save my guy, and I'll swing in with my Bladed Agent and my Ingmon Nexus. You're at 4 infect. Here's 6.
Yep.
And you're like, dress down. And I'm like,
yeah, dress down.
Dress down.
Yep.
Dress down's going to come back to haunt you later, though.
Game 3, though. Game 3, I started strong. We had a troll. We had some Bowmasters. We had an Ink Moth in play.
Yeah, and you started by scamming off of my 1 threat.
Yeah. So I took your, I think, was it Glistener Elf or?
Bladed
Agent. But I didn't have a reanimation spell until later. So we were just going with this race, and 1 Ink Moth got through. And then, how did that happen afterwards?
So I come in with the Ink Moth.
Yeah.
I am biggin for +6.
Yeah.
And then you let that resolve.
Yep.
I go to cast Berserk, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to respond with a dress down.
Oh, dress down. I had 1 mana left, yes.
And I'm like, okay. In response to that, I'm going to invigorate. So invigorate hits, makes me a 10.
Right. and then I had one draw from the dress.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So
And you're 18 life.
I was at 18, and the ink moth was a 20/20, regardless of what was gonna happen.
Yep.
So I was dead no matter what. And then I just flipped the top card. It was a force well. I'm like, yes, I can counter the berserk. And then I looked at my hand, there was no blue cards. There was no blue cards.
Oh man, wild time. Yeah, that was a really great game.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Yeah,
So much fun.
And you're playing the 5 o'clock too, right?
5 o'clock, yep, we're running it back, man.
All right, we'll see you there. And obviously you're playing in the 5K tomorrow.
Obviously, yep.
All right.
We're running it back.
Awesome,
Legacy's
man.
great right now.
Awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure playing you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, I interviewed Tim Akpinar about his experience so far. All right, we are live after the 1:30 Legacy event. It's now almost 5. Tim, how'd you do in the event?
Not so hot. I ended up going 1-2 with lands.
1-2 with lands. How was your first round?
So first round I was playing against mono black, and I kind of thought maybe it was the more grindy control-y version with like the Leyline Helm combo, but it was really actually more of an aggro build, and Leyline was more of a sideboard card that we saw in games 2 and 3. But it was a nightmare to slog through just because trying to battle through Leyline, Dauthi Voidwalker, and what the hell is that? The Opposition Agent. A lot of disruption, a lot of disruptive threats. They were playing Stalactite Stalker, so they were getting on board early with damage. So it was.
You had a pivotal play in one of the turns with Exhibition Map.
Yeah. So actually, there were actually 2 really sweet plays on a do or die turn. One worked out in my favor, and one was an absolute punt on my part. So the one that worked out in my favor was game 1, where I dredged Life from the Loam and hit Stage Depths combo. Had the expiration in play and the mana to pay for it, and they just had no answer to that, so I just turned the game around. Then game 2, I decided to crack an Expedition map under an Opposition Agent, and the opponent pointed to the Opposition Agent as I cracked it, and I was just like, whoop! And then the funny part was, though, the top deck on top of my deck was Dark Depths, and I had Stage in play, so I'm not sure I could have raced. I forgot the exact board state. I was low on life, and they had several creatures, but there was maybe a chance if I didn't, do
Shuffle your deck.
Try to resolve Expedition map's ability under an Opposition Agent.
All right. What happened in the next round?
Next round, we beat a true homebrewer. He was on sort of a discard deck. He like all kinds of discard. He had Duress in a fair deck, which you don't see very often. He was leaning pretty heavily on the very old school Dark Ritual Hypnotic Spectre combo.
There we go.
Which could have done a number on me if I didn't have timely Mazavith both games. Well, timely in game 1, and I made it timely by crop rotating for it in game 2.
Yeah.
So that was right. Game 2.
On the mono black brew, right on.
And then round 3 was really a deck after my own heart, and one that I actually did bring the cards to possibly audible to it tomorrow, but Blue-Green Omni, one of my favorite decks. I just don't think it's super well positioned right now in a Bowmaster heavy meta. Yeah. But
are they rocking Eureka too in the green?
He did have Eureka. He said he was playing 2 Eurekas. I like to play 2 Eurekas on Moto because they're cheapest chips on there, and I played no Eurekas in paper because I'm not dropping a few $100s on it. Although I don't know, I might want to own 1 Eureka. I'd never want to have 2 though.
All right.
I feel like it's a little excessive.
So 1-2 on this one. We got the 5 o'clock coming up. I think they just announced the 5 o'clock, so that's great. Good luck in the next one, man.
Likewise. I know you're on Infect. You had a sweet win to finish 2-1 in game 3 of round 3 last one I saw. I know that was awesome. You won with actual damage.
Yeah. On an Infect creature, but dressed down. Yeah.
So you don't see that every day. So that was definitely exciting. Anyways, yes, good luck.
All right, here we go. And then that was the 5 o'clock event. There was one more round. So I played against a fella Lewis who was on on another Blood Moon deck. That's 3 Blood Moon decks so far this weekend. So like I said, you're going to see a pattern here. So I was 1-1. Lewis was 2-0. But if you go undefeated, if you don't lose, you get like an extra bonus, like 500 tickets. So I was like, Lewis, like before we go into this, I will gladly give you the win either way. Like I don't want you to not get these tickets either way. But would you like to split this? Split the winnings here? And he was like, yeah. I was like, how about we just play for the 40 tickets they put on the table, and then we'll split the final amount that they give us for the bonus. So he went 3-0. Anyhow, because I lost to a Blood Moon deck. I didn't know he was playing Blood Moon. So good on me for making that deal. Yeah, so I lost to another Blood Moon deck. And then, so now, Phil, it's Sunday. The main event.
It sounds like you needed to make some changes so you don't just lose to Blood Moon.
I am playing one basic forest, Phil.
Wow.
The changes that I need to make are not get matched up against Blood Moon decks.
That's fair.
That's the answer. Like, if I don't play Blood Moon, I at least get to play Magic, right? So, I think, I lost to 2 Blood Moon decks at Eternal Weekend. I made some changes to my deck. I prioritized sideboarding against those decks. And I did as much as I could to make it so that I don't lose to that deck, because Blood Moon just stops my whole game plan. I don't get to cast spells, and I can't use my man lands to attack. So I was like, let's just assume that I'm going to get matched up against those. I had sideboard options. I'm playing one basic forest in the deck. Didn't matter.
Are we just at the stage of jamming all of the Force of Vigors and all of the Dismembers in your board?
I am playing 4 Force of Vigors and 2 Dismembers. Sorry, 3 Force of Vigors and 2 Dismembers.
Sounds like we need the full 4.
Yeah, 4 and 4, right?
4 and 4. I mean, if that's the biggest problem, right?
Yeah. All right. So yeah, Sunday occurs. I wake up, and the place is packed. I'm ready. I get all dressed up in the Pac-Man suit like I do, and I head down to the convention center floor, and I think you're one of the first people I found.
In my round 1, I was playing against an Infect player, and mid round, I forget exactly what the if we were in the middle of a game or if we were in sideboarding, but Zach just casually saunters up and then slips me a microphone and a light for future interviews, and my opponent's like, did he just give you a hard drive and walk away? And I was like, yeah, what else would it be? Why would it be anything else at one of these events? He was like, do you need a hard drive? And I was like, buddy, do I need a hard drive? And then I pulled the mic and I put it in his face. He was that was a good match. But I was like, yeah, he's also an Infect bro. And he was like, oh, wow, I thought we were a dying breed. And I was like, you're thriving.
Yeah, indeed, we're thriving. So before the tournament started, I interviewed Chris Panucci of 90s MTG fame. I think this is the first time he's been on the show, actually.
I believe he's done an interview with us a long time ago when he first started the channel.
Oh yeah.
But this might be his first time live on camera interview style.
Yeah. So here's that interview.
We are live with 90s MTG, Chris Panucci. Chris, how's it going, man?
That's me. It's going well so far.
So you're not playing in the event, though?
I'm not playing in the event.
Right. So what are you doing?
Playing plus recording would be chaotic and maybe a catastrophe. So,
well, yeah, I'm doing that, and it seems like it's going not well. So.
Yeah. Well, you're not recording while you're playing.
No, that's true. Yeah.
But so I'm recording all the matches from the day. The Legacy 5K, that's the plan.
Yeah.
And then we'll watch them on stream together, and hopefully it'll be a blast.
All right, yeah.
That's
when do you think those will go up?
Over the next week and a half, basically. Expect some Legacy 5K videos to drop. And, of course, there'll be a live stream on Twitch, 90s
awesome.
MTG.
There we go. Links below.
Yeah, links below. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, man.
All right, so now we go into round 1. Round 1, I'm playing Anon on a Blood Moon deck. So you can guess how that went for me.
You gotta learn to dodge, dude. Have you ever considered dodging? Think about that.
The thing is on top of it being a Blood Moon deck, it's someone I know on Blood Moon as well. Which I guess as we do this more often, we're gonna keep running into people we know at events. But but yeah, one of the Philly local guys, I see him, not every week. I don't go every week, but I see him at least once a month. He crushed me at Blood Moon. It was turn 1 Chalice into Magus of the Moon, and then the next game was turn 1 Chalice. Well, I had guys out, and I even had my basic forest, and I tried to go for it, but he had ways. He was red white initiative, so he did have interaction. He had stuff to get rid of my guy, it just didn't pan out for me.
To be fair, my plan against initiative also is to just scoop the second the initiative enters the board. So,
yeah, that's what it felt like. So those were quick games. I have a interview that I did with Anon afterwards.
We have my round 1 opponent, Anon here. Anon, let's talk about round 1. What happened?
Well, Zach, why don't you start by telling us why you hate initiative so much?
I just don't like it when people cheat on mana. I'm playing Invigorate. That's a fair card.
Outright a chalice check. I thought the chalice
check.
Very slick.
Yeah, you chalice checked. You got both my chalice checks. I chalice checked myself. I forgot that it was on there. And it was just like, oh, I'll play another one and attack. You're like, hold on. Chalice on 1. I'm like, oh my god. But yeah, it was turn 1 Chalice on both games. Followed up in the first game by a Magus of the Moon.
So there's some drama in between he's not sharing. I was mana screwed for a while because I had a traders out and I couldn't play anything else. And he had an ink block that got bigger. I was down to up to like 8 poison counters. Still, I finally found the mana to play the Magus, which
you were at 8 in fact. Like it was close. There was a chance I could have made that one, but did not draw the second Invigorate. However, the next one was a blowout. It was turn 1 Chalice. I'm looking at my hand. I'm like, this is no good. I did get out of Noble Hierarch. Then I played another Noble Hierarch and immediately went to attack. And you're like, hold on. Chalice on 1. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. Pass. You're like, go. Okay, cool. I draw, and it's Triumph of St. Catherine. And I have the mana to play it, so I do. And you're like, Solitude. Yes. Solitude, and then the game's pretty much over from there. You got out a Season Dungeoneer, and the game's over. There's not a whole lot I can do after that. I was hoping to stay alive for like a round, a couple more rounds just to try and find something, but it's too late at that point. But
I was also telling Zach that I've been playing Delver for the last year, but it's broken my heart to many guys.
Yeah. Yeah, you caught me by surprise with the turn 1 Chalice. I was not ready for that. All right, well, good luck in the next round, man.
Yes, likewise.
Yeah, likewise.
So, Phil, tell me about how your event went, how your round 1 went, I should say.
So my round 1, this is a little bit of a tangent. I think we should put more of the focus on you today because in the lead up to this event, I wanted to get in enough practice that I felt like I could really contend for the title. But as we had mentioned on the last show, a lot of my spare time outside of working my full-time job has been working on the rock wrestling musical that I've been gearing up for. That's
links below. I just got my tickets today.
It's going to be sweet. We're going to be at WrestleCon, which is like the expo by WrestleMania, in the first week of April. And then the second week of April, we go right into rehearsals. And then we go on our Eastern Seaboard tour. And that's been taking up a lot of time between like the final bits of casting and promotion and all this stuff. So it's just been a lot outside. So I've had limited testing. And so I felt fairly unprepared for this event, even though I had a list that like I had tried previously. And I was like, okay, it's not too bad. You know, it's an up the beanstalk control list. Like, we'll see how it goes. Now, the combination of stuff that was in the room made it so that my version of control was like an extremely poor choice for the weekend, and we'll talk about that once we look at the final standings. Like, if you were trying to be a fair Swords to Plowshares deck, not a combo Swords to Plowshares deck, like, you know, Shortcake Painter or Cephalid Breakfast or Initiative, like, you did not have a good weekend. It was the worst weekend for a fair Swords to Plowshares players that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel too bad about it because I also felt unprepared, so I was like, it's okay. But round 1, I played against Infect, and we split the first 2 games. And then in the third game, Critical Juncture, it is an entire punt on my end. Just, you know, lack of reps. This is where, you know, practice really comes in handy, because when you play against Infect, the way that you have to brainstorm is different, because you never want to get into a fight in combat. You always want to remove creatures outside of combat. That way pump spells can't convert and kill you in the midst of a stack. So, but what that means is that I needed to brainstorm to float a Terminus on top that I could then use Deduce. I was the only Deduce player in the room, funnily enough. But that way I could Deduce in when they have Inkmoth Nexus. And we never get into the stage where like Legolas's Quick Reflexes becomes a relevant card.
Yeah.
And they had an Inkmoth Nexus on the table, and I had Brainstorm Terminus in my hand, and I was aggressive, and I passed the turn rather than like thinking for a moment longer, brainstorming on my main phase, floating the Terminus, having Instance Be Terminus available to me. And the moment that the words "pass to you" left my mouth, I knew that was the turn where we were going to run into exactly the sequence that was like entirely avoidable on my part.
Yeah.
But like that was also just like, had I just gotten in a bit more practice, I would have been like, oh right, remember how to actually navigate your cantrips in this kind of matchup, which is just like, that's the thing with control. You have to know how to use your cantrips in each matchup. And I knew at the moment that it left my mouth, but it was just like, okay, this one's on me. So we got into the exact exchange where like, I'm firing off removal spells. His Quick Reflexes actually get to have text, and then that's bad for me, obviously. And then I die in that combat with the tools in my hand to have not ever even been in that situation. And so chalk the first loss up to me on my own. I was like, so it goes. And then I knew from that point, taking your first loss, one thing about this event, so it was capped at the maximum number of players that they could get to before adding a 9th round, which meant that on 8 rounds, there are people who are going to be X11 and miss.
Oh, yeah.
Like the math works out going in that there will be 2 X11s that don't make it into the top 8, which means that effectively you either don't take your loss until the much, much later rounds, or you just don't lose, right? Like IDing is a risk. And that actually brought out, I mean, we were talking about Koval before. Koval ID'd in the round before the last round and then had to play a win-in because of how the pairing shook out, in that one of the other players got paired in such a way where they couldn't ID. And so he drew and then played a win-in, as opposed to playing and then being able to ID in the last round. And that's just like how tight the margins were because of how they structured the tournament, rather than just adding a 9th round or opening it up to further players. So after taking a first loss, I knew my tournament hopes were dead. But I also knew that it was on me, and I also felt unprepared. So let's kick it over and focus on your event.
Okay, fine. Well, round 2 comes up, and I played against Amy, who we'll be interviewing soon. Amy was on that top 8 Draco-packed Beans deck. And I wasn't sure what was really going on, because I had heard about the Rainbow Rhinos deck that plays Draco and Guild Pact. But it was a really tough match for me. I think I went 0-2 in that one too. I had like 8 Infect on her at one point, and I was like, I'm gonna cast Invigorate. Okay. I'm gonna cast Legolas's Quick Reflexes. Okay. I'll attack. I'll target my 5 damage at your Draco. And she was like, hexproof? I was like, oh, why? Okay. Yeah. Well, it's still a 5/5, right? So I attack. I deal 5 damage. I think I got a couple more points in here or there. But ultimately, just interaction. It's a Beanstalk deck. There's plenty of interaction. I didn't get the Inkmoth Nexuses to dodge the ley lines. I got everything got ley lined. But the big play was in game 2, where Amy is at 8 Infect. I have out a Glistener Elf. I've got tons of my stuff has been killed. And she has 2 Dracos in play, right? Or Scion of Draco. I go for the attack, knowing, obviously you're going to block, right? Double block, right? Double block. Okay. Invigorate. Resolves. Invigorate for the kill. I have 9, you have 8, you have 2 4/4s with first strike, but I have a 9/9. Force of Will. And all I had in my hand was a Legolas's Quick Reflexes. So I was hoping for a removal spell so I could just no. And then that was pretty much the game at that point. So at that point, I was officially dead at X and 2. and I decided I was going to keep playing to have fun. And then we go into round 2.
One thing to say about Amy's performance throughout the day. So she lost round 1 and then played against you round 2, but then won out the rest of the day because got into the top 8 at 7 and 1. And that was what a successful
comeback. The comeback kid, man. Yeah.
Particularly also to be the lone beanstalk player in the top 8. But one thing about her list, which we'll talk to afterwards when we do a little metagame breakdown here, we'll talk about why I think of the fact that beanstalk fair white decks, right? Fair white decks had their worst performance ever. Amy is the only arguable standout. I mean, it is the ley line of the Guild Pack Scion of Draco deck, so there is some amount of cheesing that's happening here. But we'll get into it. But I think that her list is indicative of a good call of this kind of variation of list, given the metagame that we saw in Philly. And I'll be curious when she is interviewed on the cast, what her take was on her metagame call bringing into this event, because I think it panned out exactly right. From just a structural standpoint of how decks actually line up, which we'll talk about. I'll be interested to hear her thoughts on that. So, log that, listeners, for when Amy comes on the cast. Yeah.
So round 3 comes up, and I end up playing against a mono black Scaminator deck. A bit of a budget deck, but it's my nightmare, man. This is the exact opposite kind of deck that I want to play against. You've got access to 1,000 different counter spells, kill spells, Snuff Out, Fatal Push, Stalactite Stalker. Just everything you could think of, and the Reanimator package, and the Scam package. Just oh my god, this is not a great matchup for me. I lucked out and was able to kill an early Troll of Khazad-dûm in the first game, but it didn't matter. He ended up getting through and killing me in the first game. I killed a Troll of Khazad-dûm with a Legolas's Quick Reflexes, but just got in afterwards. I think twice I just had to shuffle my deck to see more cards. And I had out a Sylvan Library, and he eventually flashed. I don't think he realized for a while that I had that works really poorly for me with Orcish Bowmasters. So I was kind of well, I mean, if he has it, he has it. And so when I went to Brainstorm is when he decided that he was going to cast Orcish Bowmasters. But I think he had it in his hand for a while. So I was at a point where I had to shuffle my deck to see more cards. But he had Opposition Agent out. So every time I fetch, he's just getting one of my lands. But I just wanted to see different cards, and I never got the second pump spell I needed for my Blooded Agent that was out and attacking, but just wasn't doing enough damage fast enough. And then the second two were just me prioritizing timing over his timing for kill spells. He tried to kill my guy during combat, which is as we all know, you're not supposed to do. So I ended up getting one there, but I eked it out. It was a lucky run. We literally, the last game, we were literally just top decking to see who would take it, So I ended up having enough creatures, and I got there.
My round 3 was against Grixis Delver. Nothing really to report. It was the classic lose the die roll, ABC Days Wasteland, turn our hands face up, line everything up, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much back-to-back games. I didn't take any notes on it because it literally was, we just turned our hands face up. Everything on my end was forced. I was playing 3 colors, so, shame on me.
Yeah.
But that's it.
All right. So then in the next round, I played Nick, and Nick had an amazing deck. Nick was playing a budget Storm list that had a Shockland, Surveil Land mana base. And you know what's funny about that, Phil? That ain't budget against me. It doesn't matter if you have Shocklands. I'm not doing that kind of damage to you,
That's so dope. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was playing a legit Storm deck against my Infect deck.
Well, to be fair, if he was on Ad Nauseam, then it still is budget.
Checking the deck list right now. I'm pretty sure the answer is no. He was not. No, not on Ad Nauseam. He was on Mizzix's Mastery. So entombing, Peer into the Abyss, or Gaia's Will into the graveyard, cast Mizzix Max Tree, and go from there. It was like a Burning Wish style deck. Really cool deck. And I asked him afterwards, I was like, how much does this deck cost? He pulled up his Moxfield. Let's talk about Moxfield for a second. Show that Moxfield ad. Eternal Dirtles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned. So he pulls up his Moxfield and he shows me it's a $600 deck, which is like, dude, budget list. That's like, we're gonna do a budget episode. I'm including that deck in the budget episode because $600 is like under $1,000. Is hard to do for a competitive Legacy deck.
Yeah, considering that LEDs, we're moving around in the room for like 470 a piece or whatever. Yeah, I mean, LED-less Storm, figuring that out.
Yeah. And so I got an interview with Nick after the match, just talking about the deck.
All right, we're here with Nick, my round 4 opponent, and you're on a budget Storm list.
Yeah.
So first off, what does it cost?
About $540.
Awesome. So that's cheap for Legacy.
Yeah, for Legacy.
That's cheap for Standard nowadays, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me about the list.
So I came about it a year or so ago. Brian Cook of the Epic Storm ended up putting together a budget Mizzix's Mastery Peer into the Abyss deck. You insert the Peer, Mizzix's Mastery Storm off that way. I tried that out for a little while just because I don't own reserve list cards.
Yeah.
And that ended up, just falling to the wayside. It needed some brainstorms to work. Didn't have all the good mana to do it. And then through some circumstances, I wasn't able to borrow reserve list cards this weekend for the Epic Storm. So I ended up brewing this list due to the new Surveillance. They actually make a huge help.
Yeah.
And they make the decks run so much smoother.
Yeah. So in our match, I made the mistake of not realizing that you were on Storm after you surveilled a Galvanic Relay, and then you took away the first game easily. The second 2 games, sometimes I do 10.
Yeah.
But tell me about the rest of your tournament. What was your first round like?
I'm 1-3 today. I actually lost, so I went 0-2 into round 3. Got my round 1 opponent. I know round 2 I played against Mono Red Painter, or what seemed like Mono Red. And then round 3, I ended up beating the Epic Storm, which is
a little poetic justice there.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It felt bad. It wasn't, Brian or anything like that. I'm nowhere near as good of a map player as he is, but I ended up just entombing the Peer.
Yep.
Mizzix's Master. There you go. Opponent conceded, so it felt good. I got to storm off a few times this weekend. I did think I stormed off once in round 1, but I managed to stay in the X2 bracket. But yeah, I'm just here to play some Paper Legacy.
Oh yeah, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, Nick, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Phil, how did your round 4 go?
My round 4 was against Kevin Brenneman of Legacy Pit Notoriety. He was on Leyline of the Guild Pact, X-Color up the Beanstalk. And we've talked about a bunch of how, like, in the Beanstalk mirrors, the only actual thing that's ever relevant is Beanstalk. Like, if you have it and your opponent doesn't, everything else is ancillary. Yep. And that's back-to-back games. He naturally found... He had more natural Beanstalks than I did, not having to cantrip for them, and that's just the whole ball game in that matchup. Yeah. So, there things did happen. I was fighting over his Beanstalk. He had Force of Blows to protect them. Eventually, I got rid of them. But the fact that he was able to find more total Beanstalks over back-to-back games naturally than I did, that was the whole ball game. So while the games were fun, they weren't all that interesting. In that, you can really dwindle it down to he had Beanstalk, I didn't. End of game.
Interesting thing to take away from this is, so you, like you said, you're going to be busy with the show, and there's going to be a little bit of a gap, like about a month and a half gap, where you won't be on because you'll be traveling with the show, doing other stuff. Maybe we'll have you on for an episode or 2, but for the most part, you'll be busy. We're going to have the Legacy Pit on as guests for one of those weeks, so that'll be awesome.
Oh yeah, that'll be dope.
Yeah. And at that point, I had realized that I'm even though I won this match, the tournament is certainly over for me. I have been out all weekend. I was starting to get pretty tired, and I live close. So I was like, you know what? If anyone's leaving after this round, I should just get a ride to the train with them and get home. So I was home by 5 o'clock, I think. I'm sure we can timestamp the photo. Here's a photo of me and my dog. So I got home. I got home pretty quickly after that. Phil, how long did you stay for the whole event? I guess you probably did, right?
I stayed for the whole event because the guys that I was in the car with made a much deeper run. They were playing real decks. I mean, a couple of them were on breakfast, and another one was playing Dimir Scam without the reanimator package and was making a deep run. I played my last round in round 5 against Storm. This was just another example of I had moved away from counterbalance towards up the beanstalk for this event, and I felt that in the first game. So they weren't really all that close. It was, no real notes to note. But then if anybody wants to take a look, I mean, by the time this comes out, I won't change my Mox field between now and then. I was just like, I learned from this event. And if you, now that your event's over and my event's over, if we want to talk about like the metagame breakdown and what I think it means structurally for the format going forward, and where I made an immediate adaptation to play at my local the following night, that I went 3-1, could have been 4-0 with, if a slight bit of luck, I'd swap sides, which I'll talk about. But one thing that we talked about a bunch on the show is how Days in Wasteland, that shell that has just been the best shell forever, and it was indicative in this weekend where, it was 4 Dimir Scam players, most of which were on the Reanimator package included, and then also Grixis Delver. That they're all Orcish Bowmaster, Grief, Days Wasteland decks, right? And one thing that Days Wasteland that we've talked about is how Days Wasteland compresses the format and just makes it so that you get punished for doing anything that is expensive, right? Because if you get wastelanded, that stuff gets stuck in your hand. If you do hit your land drops and you try and cast it in, Days will then punish you for that. Obviously, they work in tandem. And that has only been exacerbated by the fact that the threats over time have gotten increasingly more powerful, meaning that you have less time to deploy your stuff, meaning that the window in which your stuff is even relevant is narrowed, and so you have to end up walking into that basic fundamental of Days in Wasteland punishing you than you otherwise would, because you just don't have the luxury of time anymore the way that you used to and have the Rug Thresh days, where it's this is just a 1/1 that becomes a 3/3 later on, or a small Tarmogoyf starting out. It's now everything chunks, and if anything ever turns sideways, it's too devastating. You just got to remove something on site, or be able to race on site or fight on site.
So I think my takeaway from this tournament, the thing that I walk away from this tournament knowing in my heart of hearts, Phil, is that I can't get by on budget lists and borrowing cards anymore. I borrowing duels is fine. Everyone should do it if you can. But it just, I don't get enough time to get in real reps with the deck. And unless I'm practicing enough, I'm not practicing enough. So I need to start playing online. So I'm going to start streaming again and playing online. And I need to set aside money to get dual lands again, because we're not going to top 8 unless one of the two of us is playing a real deck. And right now, neither one of us seems to be playing a real deck. So
I mean,
I'm going to make a try.
End, that's a bit more stubborn on my end. However, I have made some the adaptations that I'll talk about. And granted, it's I'm always in this vein, I'm stubborn because it's the deck that I actually enjoy playing. But one of the in that Days Wasteland foundational gameplay that we just spoke about, the addition of Grief being on the play with the Reanimate package.
They grab your hate.
Reanimate being, it becomes a forcible double Thoughtseize on turn 1, and the play pattern of Grief being is so much fundamentally different from Unmask, in that I had a game, for example, where I have forced blue card, Swords to Plowshares, other stuff in my opening hand, right? It's okay, if I'm in the blind, I have protection against most things. This is how I would like an opening hand to look, right? Now, if you're on the draw and the opponent goes turn 1 Grief you, well, you can't force a will it, because it just ends up in the graveyard where they reanimate it and take your whole hand anyway.
Yeah.
But then if you don't, they just take the force of will, reanimate, and then strip the Swords to Plowshares anyway.
Yeah.
So there isn't actually a sequence of agency in that, other than forcing it and just hoping that they don't have to reanimate on their turn 1.
Get better at rolling dice, Phil.
Get better at rolling dice. So, but the addition of Grief plus Reanimate, further pressing the die roll to being just a monumentally deciding factor in a matchup, further stresses the compression of that gameplay. Now, if we were to look at any deck, you don't see a legit, outside of exactly a copy or two of Teferi in the breakfast lists that have made it into the top 40. You don't see a legitimate 3-drop until you get to 42nd place. Just there isn't a 3-drop.
Yeah, it's just Murktide Region doesn't count for sure.
Murktide Regions is a 2-drop. Draco is a 2-drop. All of the Ancient Tomb decks that are playing quote 3-drops are not 3-drops because they're playing fast mana to offset the Day's Wasteland pattern.
Sure.
So there isn't. So there's no way that you can argue to me that a 3-drop off of Lotus Petal Ancient Tomb is a 3-drop, right? Yeah. For in terms of what we're talking about, right? It's a 3-drop in terms of CMC, but it's not a 3-drop in terms of when it's actually hitting the table.
How it matters, yeah.
How it matters,
yeah.
So this format, as we saw at the SCG, where the best performing deck was the Grief Scaminator package, the further pressing of the best shell of the Day's Wasteland shell by adding Grief to it makes it so that 3-drops are effectively soft banned. As long as that deck is around and doing well at high numbers, you just cannot register a 3-drop and expect to meaningfully do well. It is untenable to do so, in my point of view.
Yeah.
As somebody who's
well, Phil,
go ahead.
I think also, we got the ban list update about 2 weeks early. I think because looking at this meta, I would make an argument that Grief should be not in any format, and maybe Orcish Bowmasters. Now, I don't actually think Orcish Bowmasters is that much of a problem. Certainly is a problem for my Infect deck. I'll just pump my guy and attack you. But I think people perceive it as a much higher problem. But 20 copies in the top 8 is a thing. It's the biggest thing minus Force of Will. It's the biggest pillar of the format card, right? In this top 8. And it's the card that everyone kind of hates. But I would say after this weekend, I would look for Grief to be banned. I don't who likes to play against that card?
Yeah, I mean, there's argument for quality of life purposes. I'm not at a place for calling for bans. I mean, I think there are so many things that are unhealthy that are
unfortunately there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen.
In terms of when we get to another ban discussion, whatever, it's you can look at Bowmasters as being super ubiquitous in ways that Death Red Shaman was. I mean, I wrote a fucking parody about it. I'm not in the headspace to talk about all that stuff because there's a dozen cards that I think are reasonably on the chopping block that. I've seemed to be a lone horse on, but to speak to how to potentially adapt to this now omnipresence of Day's Wasteland plus Grief play pattern is one thing that all of this stuff does is it means that the constraint that you have a lot of the time is going to be time itself, right?
Okay.
One thing the only way that you can offset time is curve compression, which is what we see. Grief will beget grief in the same way that you just have to bring it down, which is a nod to what Amy brought to the table in her Leyline of Guild Pact Scion of Draco deck, because even though that's quote the only beanstalky control deck, there's the cheese element of this 0-drop that then puts this untouchable threat on turn 2, right?
Yeah,
that's enabling then all of your other stuff to be extremely cheap. But if specifically in her list, I'm looking at it right now, on top of the Scion of Draco, Leyline of Guild Pact cheese thing, and then the package of up the Beanstalk with Leyline Binding and then the appropriate mana.
Sure.
She was also running 3 Solitude.
Yeah.
Now, twofold on that note. A, it's another free spell, which further talks about the curve compression.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that it adds a ton more redundancy in that. Let's say you lose the die roll and your opponent is going to double grief you on turn 1 and you're effectively going to multiply. That means that your deck has to be more of the same.
Yeah.
So a lot of and so when I saw that, and that's what that is a potential solution. I'm not saying it is a reasonable solution, but it's a potential solution in my mind. That's like, okay, if you know you're going to be forcibly thought seized multiple times in either turn 0 or turn 1 of the game, then what your deck then can't have as many like smatterings of different effects. It needs to have the same effect for what your deck's trying to do in a higher volume. That way, when you are forcibly mulliganed, that you can still operate.
Phil, I think another interesting and important thing to note there too is that the crux of her deck, right, relies on a card that you can't get griefed out of on turn 1, right? Like the ley line comes down before the grief does, right? And even in that same situation, because you can cast Solitude for free, wouldn't you rather have the agency over what they take from you by saying I'll lose 2 cards, right, to remove your grief from the game? You still get one of my cards, but you're not going to get a 3/2, right? Like you're not going to get to reanimate it, and you're not going to get a 3/2 out of it. To me, that's worth in that scenario being like, well, grief resolves with that trigger on the stack. I will spend 2 cards to get rid of it because I'm getting rid of the creature that you're going to get afterwards, and I'm going to get rid of your ability to reanimate it. Yeah,
the Leyline of the Guild Pact interaction is in the Grief Bowmaster Days Wasteland package.
It's a perfect example of the like trunkification of the format, right?
It is yes, because one thing that the Leyline of the Guild Pact also does is if you have accepted that you have to compress your deck so that your curve stops at 2 tops, then like so if your curve stops at 2, then you have you're the tip of the hat to Days. If your deck is all the same thing, a la I'm looking at the list: Swords to Plowshare, Solitude, Leyline Binding, like it's all just blanket removal that all costs 1 or less. Right. Okay. That's our nod to grief and the redundancy that it requires in order to play through it.
Yep.
And then Leyline of the Guild Pact solves in combination with those things the Wasteland problem, in that now you can't get wasted off a color because Guild Pact is fixing all of your colors. Exactly. So as long as you actually hit raw lands, you will be good and be able to cast all of your spells when your curve stops at 1.25.
Yep.
So like that's what I mean by like the structure of her list was a really great metagame call for what ended up being at the top tables, and a good example of like being able to go 0-1 into 7-0, because at the top tables now the deck is structured to be really good against exactly that kind of thing.
So a friend of the show, David Marchese, did end up 15th place.
You got 15th overall.
So I did get an interview with him at the end of round 4. So I want to make sure we highlight that.
All right, we're here with friend of the show, David Marchese. Are you on Acast?
I am not on Acast.
You're not on Acast. What's going on?
The card I want for Acast, which is a card Phil is familiar with, Case of the Filch Falcon, is in the mail. So when I get those, I will be testing Acast again.
So what are you on today?
On the very imaginative Grixis Delver.
Okay. How you doing?
I'm 3-1 right now.
3-1. Okay, so sounds like you made a good choice.
Technically still live. I literally went out, but I am live. Every Magic player stream.
Yeah. To be live. Yeah, of course. So to not be undead.
Are you playing?
I am playing. I'm X-2, but I lost my first 2 rounds.
Infect?
Yeah, Infect. Yep. So So anything cool happened so far? The amazing plays, or just bowmastering people out of the meta?
Oh, my Doomsday player got the most ridiculous line against me. I fully wasted and stifled them off lands, not realizing they were on Doomsday yet. They went Lotus Petal, Dark Writ, I daze it, they force blue card, and then they go second Dark Writ, cast Doomsday, 2 black mana floating, weak their pile, cast Night Whisper, draw the swamp, the cycler, Street Read, plus LED, up LED, hold priority, cycle.
Oh my God, they got it.
Consider Bassa.
What?
From 1 Lotus Petal.
That's amazing.
I was sick.
Yeah, that would be.
I did win that match,
too.
but I really feel like I lost the match after that.
Whoa. Wow. That's fun. All right. Well, I mean, you're still live.
I am live.
We're going into round.
We're going to round 5.
5.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck, man.
Thank you.
And so, Phil, I guess after talking about the like lowering of the format and the Days Wasteland, what's your takeaways?
So I think if this is now going to be indicative of like where the top deck now is situated, like the top deck is always going to be some variation of Days Wasteland. Now, for what it's worth, Grixis Delver still won. Now, the variation between Grixis Delver and Scam is that one is DRC and one is Grief, and there's pros and cons to each one, and but like foundationally, if you're not playing Days Wasteland in some variety, whether it's Days Wasteland plus Bowmaster, I should note, that was what put the result here. If you're not playing Days Wasteland Bowmaster either with Grief or DRC in either of those two shells, you really have to have a solid reason not to, because you are effectively going to be handicapped by not doing the objectively best thing, as has been borne out by the results in a lot of ways. And people were saying, but Phil, Triumph of St. Catherine won the North American Eternal Weekend. I want to say that was before Triumph was online, right? And a lot of paper play is informed by data online.
Of course.
And so the fact that Triumph wasn't available leading up to that event, I think people were unprepared for how to play against that card, even though they knew it was a thing.
Yeah.
They just didn't have the reps with it in the same way that they did for this kind of event. And so I put an asterisk on like legitimate win, awesome win. Triumph, I think, is still great. But I think that like once people are prepared for Triumph, it's a lot easier to beat if you have those kinds of reps against it. You know what I mean? And I know that from somebody who's played a lot of Triumph and seen the trajectory of it, being from like extremely excellent to people like sort of figuring out that maybe they need to respect it to some degree, to just understanding that it's part of the format and they now need to have a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And now it's like it's not nearly the haymaker that it once was, granted, a couple formats ago, particularly when people couldn't play against it with or against it online. Yeah. So as an example for somebody who isn't playing a Days Wasteland shell, I'm not advocating anybody play Miracles. I think if you do that, you're just asking to, go O2 drop. But I won't change my Mox field until after this episode comes out, even if I'm testing other things, because I want to show an example of like taking that theory and then applying it to a deck list. My current deck list for Miracles is literally 4 ofs down the line to where it's like 4 Force, 4 Ponder, 4 Brainstorm, 4 Source to Plowshares, 4 Terminus, but then also 4 Counterbalance, 4 Deduce, 4 Jace the Mind Sculptor. Like I'm leaning into all 4 ofs in that, and I cut the third color. 2 colors only. Specifically
to stop Grief, right?
Even though I was only on 3 prismatic ending, like I'm always like, you got to have the third color because if your prismatic endings can't hit the 3 drops, you're going to be really punished. And I was like, no, screw that. We're testing theory. Be cleaner on your colors. That way, if you get Wasteland, it's not as punishing of getting cut off a color, and then just be as like linearly 4 ofs all the way down the line, right? My offset on prismatic ending is because I wanted to play the one of Thwart, because obviously. But then post board, what I did was I added 2 more Path to Exile as additional Swords to Plowshares because Grief is going to strip you. But then I also played 4 Snapcaster Mage. I was really leaning into trying to prove, is this kind of theory actually right, where your deck just has to be the same effect across all of the cards?
Yeah.
And I've only got a couple of rounds of testing with that list, but I went 3-1 with an argument of it going the other way in a way that was a lot cleaner. I played against Epic Storm, I played against Grixis Delver, I played against some of the other top decks. And it definitely felt a lot better than playing the cards that vary in their effects and then just getting stripped or getting dazed or getting wasted off a color. Like, I think that not only is the format compressed, it also has to become more homogenized in the effects that you play.
Yeah. Until
either MH3 overhauls the format or there is action taken in some in a banned capacity. So
we'll have to see.
Let me know. Yeah. Let us know in the comments if that is how you would navigate that. If you agree with that take. I mean, it's still something that I'm piecing together from like how this format in theory is structurally set up. The combination of Grief Days Wasteland compresses and homogenizes the formats in terms of like your curve and the effects you can play. And that's how you have to approach it if you're going to be able to beat what is now pretty substantively the top deck of Days Wasteland plus stuff.
Yeah. Well, Phil, with that said, I want to point everybody towards our Patreon. If they want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. I saw a lot of people that support the show at the event. Super awesome to meet everybody, and I can't wait to see another one. Also, again, you can check out Tales of Adventure, use the code DURTLES for 5% off of all of your purchases. That helps support the show. And of course, you can use Moxfield. That's a free service that that will help show that you're supporting the show. And from there, we'll see you at the next SCG event. Have a good one, everybody. For the gift that keeps on giving all year round, join our Patreon at patreon.com/eternaldurtles. And hey, check out this playlist we got up here with all of our interviews over the last couple of years. Some great people from the Legacy community, some really great guests.